something that's helped us as a church to think about culture and about how we interact together is based on the work of a man named Richard Lewis. We've taken his work and modified it a bit to fit our situation. And I first want to say it's very clearly an oversimplification. There's so much that it buries that it doesn't highlight. Yet we found it to be really useful in how we think about our church and how we relate to each other. And so what he does is he draws a triangle. And in this triangle, he describes differences between cultures. And so he picks out three cultures to put at the points in the triangle that are quite different from each other. And so at this top point in the triangle, he describes cultures that tend to be more emotional. They tend to be a bit loud and very energetic. And there can be a sense of chaos and many things going on, and it's not seemingly overly controlled. And so the way we talk about these cultures is that they are expressive. And then at this other corner, he talks about cultures that are much more logical. They're focused on efficiency and productivity. They tend to be very disciplined, and they do one thing at a time. And to describe these, we talk about cultures that are much more analytical. And then over in the other corner, he picks cultures that tend to be much quieter. So they tend to be quiet, slow to speak. They put a lot of emphasis on paying attention to each other, and so watching for others. And so it's a much different experience of compared to the energy or the analysis. These we refer to as reflective cultures. And so in thinking about this, again, as an oversimplification, but it has been helpful for us that in the expressive cultures, Lewis picks Italians as a culture that is very expressive and energetic, and he picks German culture as one that is very analytical and much very logical and one thing at a time. And then he picks Vietnamese culture as very reflective. And something that's been helpful to me is to realize that then cultures show up in different places on this map. But it's not just cultures. So in some ways it is the cultures, but in some ways it can be personality. It can be a family. And so we end up being someplace on this map. And so for illustration, Lewis says that mainstream culture in the U.S. it's rather pragmatic. It's toward the analytical, but it's also pretty expressive, fairly loud. And he looks at Canadian culture and says it also is rather analytical and productive. And efficient and logical, but it's more reflective than culture in the U.S. And so he puts different people or different cultures in different places. And so it's easy to, one of the things that we encourage people to do is to start to think and say, well, where do I naturally live? And again, there are reasons because of people's culture, their personality, or their family that lead to them behaving in certain ways. And so then what we try to do is to figure out, as a church, what does it look like for an expressive person to engage, for an analytical person, or for a reflective person? Again, the freedom that people move between these, yet it's helpful to think, when I am operating in an expressive way, what does it look like to be involved in a worship service? And so it's been helpful for us to realize that as people describe this, that for an expressive person to be in a worship service, there's a strong need to express. These are people who feel the need to say something, to speak back, to say amen, to stand up, to dance, to put their hands in the air, many things that they want to do to express themselves. As we have as a church talked this through, people who have a more analytical bent say, you guys can express if you want to express. Don't make us do that, because that's uncomfortable for us. But we want to know that there is reason, that there's a rationale for what's happening. We want to understand the content. And we want to know that things aren't just people expressing whatever they feel like expressing, that this is driven by truth, by things that we can understand and we can think about and we can ask questions. And as we've talked about it, people who are more reflective, one of the things that they've said is, give us a chance to reflect. At some point, can there be fewer words? Because all these words make it hard for us to process, and it takes longer to process. And so we've done the same type of thing of thinking of meetings. And it's clear that people who are more expressive want the opportunity to share their ideas. And the analytical people want to know the data. They want to know, does this really make sense? And reflective people often say, we need more time to think about it. Give us time ahead of time, give us time afterwards. Help us have the opportunity to process things rather than wanting to have to say things on the spot. And so this is a grid that we found to be very helpful. And it's a way to show love for each other. A way to love expressive people is to allow them to express. A way to love analytical people is give them a chance to ask questions, help explain what we're thinking. And a way to love reflective people is to give space for reflection, and give space for them to be able to speak up, even if they're not as quick to express themselves as the expressive people.